After grinding the finals with the best players in the world and conducting extensive research, here are the best, the most useful, and most meta loadouts for every build in the game, starting off with the light build. It's safe to say that the Cloaking Device is the best specialization for light players right now. The specialization allows the user to go invisible for up to 12 seconds at a time, where the amount of time you have works like a resource and it can be reactivated at any time, slowly draining that bar of 12 seconds of potential invisibility. While the device does turn you invisible as you stand still, you will still be slightly visible when you are running around, and you can be spotted by the trained eye, so don't get too confident with how invisible you are. In addition to that, using this ability plays a pretty distinct noise, so you might be better off not activating the device if you are on a flank and you know that the enemy team isn't aware of your presence. Since you can toggle the invisibility on and off, managing your resource will be key, where you don't want to end up using too much of your invisibility when you don't need it. A good rule of thumb is making sure you have about 3/4 of your cooldown before you head into a fight. And as fun and as versatile as a grapple is, or how fun the evasive dash can be, there's nothing that beats being able to go invisible and get the drop on any enemies that are out of position, especially if you combine it with a high burst damage weapon, such as the SH-1900 or the double barrel shotgun. This sawed-off shotgun is a beast. It carries 2 shots per magazine, and if utilized in the closest ranges, it can deal up to 180 damage per shot. That's 360 for both. That is well enough to one-shot a light player if you get close enough, or 2-shot a medium or heavy player just if you manage to get up close and personal. The SH-1900 will really only yield consistent results if you're using the Cloaking Device, as this is the only way you'll be able to not only catch an enemy off guard, but actually the timing to line up an easy shot and, actually get close enough, that being within a few meters or homie kissing distance, where you can actually deal maximum damage and get those one pumps. I suggest getting close with the Cloaking Device and just going for the kill either by shooting at the enemy or combining it with a gadget that I will get to later. If you for some reason don't manage to get the kill with your all-in burst, quickly cloak up, reset the fight, get out of range, and come back from another angle, because the second the enemy team knows where you are, odds are you're about to die a horrible death. Due to your limited range, you are usually better off staying out of sight and out of mind from the enemies until the fight really starts with full engages and even trading, as they will be too busy to deal with you playing the flank. But let's talk about that one gadget I mentioned earlier, that being the stun gun. If you manage to get up close enough and hit your enemy with it, this beautiful gadget will cancel your target's current channeled action. It will stop them from being able to carry cash boxes, reviving teammates, stealing a cash out, using any of their abilities, aiming down sights, and even slowing down their movement by 60% for an entire 5 seconds, turning them into a pretty easy target without too much of a way to fight back. The stun gun can be a great opener if you want to ensure that your one-shot combo is successful. You can use the Cloaking Device to get within stun gun range on an isolated target, stun them, get up a little bit closer before they manage to react or turn around, and then finish them off with 2 easy shotgun pumps thanks to that decreased movement speed and, their lack of ability to fight back. If you manage to get a kill with the shotgun without using your stun gun, another very viable use for the stun gun is using it on an enemy who's going for a revive or defibrillator play on their teammates, as to stop them from resetting and getting back up again. Now, these 3 items on their own will make for a killer combo for the light class. And while the next 2 gadget choices will be up to your preference, I have 2 recommendations that you really should consider. The first one of these being the breach charge. It has a lot of versatility, where it's normally intended to blow up gadgets, walls, floors, and basically everything that can be destroyed. This means that you can use it to open up smaller holes in walls and floors and roofs and get good off angles to lob grenades at the enemies. You can also use the breach charge on top of the cash out to blow it up if an enemy starts capturing it. But the main reason the breach charge is a must pick over the rest of the gadgets is because of the nuke meta. By placing 2 breach charges on a throwable object, ideally a green gas or red explosive canister, and lobbing it at an enemy and activating them once they get close enough, you will be able to deal upwards of 398 damage from barely any effort, which can score a kill on any class and completely turn the fight in your favor. The next recommendation is especially useful if you're dealing with a lot of heavy players, and honestly, that is really where the meta is going, so listen up. Your job as a light will be to get the opening damage or kills and to act as a disruptor, and what better way to do that than using the glitch grenade. 1.8 seconds after being thrown, the glitch grenade will explode and give any nearby players and objects the glitch effect. This will disable any current active gadgets or abilities, including but not limited to invisibility, shields, or even turrets, but also make anyone affected by it unable to use any abilities themselves for the next 10 seconds. As I mentioned, with the amount of players using utilities such as heavy teams running with double or even quadruple shields, this is an excellent way to give yourself an opener. The glitch grenade can be thrown at the enemies to turn them into easier targets for your teammates, also be used in order for you to get some picks. If you are on the flank and manage to hit a fat glitch grenade, this will mean that the affected player or players will have a much harder time reacting to you if you do go in, meaning that you can use the glitch grenade as a real opener. You can get up closer with a cloaking device and then either stun gun a shotgun or just shotgun, and then use the cloaking device to switch up the angle and reset over and over again until the enemy team is dead. This combination as a whole is ridiculously strong, and there aren't many teams that know how to deal with it. It might not be super versatile, I mean, it doesn't have much range other than nuking, but so far it works against almost all combinations, making it the ideal choice if you're playing light. But let's take a look at the best loadout for the medium build as well. The medium player's job is to support their team, usually playing in the middle to the back of the team in the so-called anchor position, and as such they need a good weapon with solid and consistent damage. And for most players that will be the AKM. The iron sights are a little bit rough to aim with, but it provides a solid damage per second of 228 with a huge magazine size of 36 bullets. And since it deals 20 damage per body shot, it has the capability of dealing over 720 damage with one magazine. This makes the weapon pretty forgiving, which allows you to miss a few shots and still secure a kill with only one magazine. And if you're fighting many players at the same time, you're able to secure a kill, target switch, and then keep firing. If you have a hard time securing a kill in one magazine with most guns, or you just need to provide a solid baseline damage to your team, then the AKM will be the best choice. But if you're a bit more accurate and want to go for one clips, you can also opt for the FCar. The FCar has a slightly higher damage per second at 238 DPS, higher damage per bullet at 26, but it comes at a cost of a much smaller magazine size. It only carries 20 bullets for a total max damage of 520 per magazine. But the trade-off doesn't lie in the stats, but rather in the way the gun handles. First off, the FCar comes with a holo sight, making tracking enemies so much easier, in addition to an easy to control recoil pattern that practically only goes straight up, as opposed to the AKM that starts to curve around its middle point. The FCar makes hitting one clips, which is especially useful if you're fighting heavies, much easier than with the AKM. I'd say that if your playstyle revolves around one clipping enemies instead of laying down consistent suppressing fire, then the FCar will be the better choice for you. I recommend experimenting and seeing what feels best. Moving on, as for the medium specialization, I'd say that the healing beam will almost always be the best choice. The healing beam is another weapon that can heal any teammates within a 15-meter radius at a rate of 50 health per second. It is currently the only healing ability in the game and allows you to not only provide pressure to the enemy team through dealing damage, but it will also allow your team to stay stable and, not get knocked. Better yet, thanks to the high heals per second, you can have a teammate cap the cash out through tons of pressure from the enemy, while at the same time being able to heal them through any gas that might be covering the point. Having access to heals will allow your team to sustain so much more damage over a short period of time, and if utilized properly, where you will top off your teammates the second they start getting a little bit too low, while still being able to back up to your weapon as soon as enemies might push up on that damage, will give you a massive edge over the teams that aren't running it. It is especially useful to combine the healing beam with a defibrillator, which you should be running, but we'll get to that later. Now, if you are two mediums on a team, you can swap your healing beam for the Recon Senses on their own if you're the only medium player on your team. I don't believe that the Recon Senses are that good, but since somebody else has the healing covered, you can use them to sniff out where all the enemies are at any time. When activated, Recon Senses let you spot any enemies through walls or visual obstructions such as smoke or gas. The enemies become red blobs that are larger and stronger the closer that the enemy is. Tapping into the Recon Senses and communicating where enemies are located will let your team make informed decisions about where to rotate, if a cash out or vault is valuable, and if there are light players sneaking around. It just gives you a little bit more information, which lets you make the right and, most importantly, the most informed decisions. But let's move on and take a look at all of the gadgets that you should be running when you're playing medium. As I mentioned earlier, any medium player should be running a defibrillator, no matter whether they are only medium on their team or not. That's because after quickly rubbing the pads together, you can instantly revive a teammate with 40% of their maximum health, saving you those precious seconds it would take you to go for an actual full revive mid-battle. In addition to that, the teammate receives about a 1-second window where they cannot take damage, which means that in some cases, sometimes assuming you're not in the line of fire of too many enemies, it might be viable to just revive them in the open, get into cover, and then top them up with the healing beam as they get into cover themselves. The defibrillator allows for a much faster reset than any other ability in the game, and much like with the healing beam, it just lets your team stay on their feet for so much longer, making it the perfect choice for any type of medium player. Building off the fact I believe any medium player should be enabling their team, this makes the Zipline a sure choice. Using the Zipline will place a zipline starting at the feet of the user and attached to a target up to 40 meters away. The zipline will stay forever unless one of the attachment points are broken, meaning that you can make a zipline to a high ground that you want and then break it once you've taken it to avoid any enemies from following you. Having a zipline has many uses. Most commonly, it will be used to quickly get from point A to B, like at the start of a match when you want to get to the vault or cash out as fast as possible, or when you want to get back into the game after respawning. It can be used to cross gaps or quickly take the high ground or god position on the enemy. Depending on enemy's position and how they are holding, in many cases, the zipline can be used to reach them from the angles that they don't expect, which lets you catch them off guard. Even though you need to be careful of the placement of your zipline, as odds are you can easily get shot off when taking it, there is a strategy you can pull off with the heavy class to make this a thing of the past, but more on that later. And whether you decide to use the zipline or not, the next choice will always be a guaranteed pick for me, and that will be the Jumppad. After being placed, stepping on the Jumppad will launch you 15 meters, either straight up in the air if you step on it, or in a slight arc if you sprint and slide on top of it, and really far horizontally if you place the Jumppad on an off angle like on top of a set of stairs or on goo. Just like the zipline, it will allow you to quickly take a high ground or rotate to a position that you would like, but it serves a few different uses as well. The Jumppad can be used as a trap and placed where somebody might be walking to force them up into the air where they will become very easy targets. And if you place it under a cash out box and then move it using explosives, blowing a hole under the cash out box where it will land on the Jumppad, or if you just use the Jumppad on one of these cash out boxes that are on an elevator and then just move it up and down, it will start bouncing and keep bouncing until the Jumppad is destroyed. This will make it impossible to steal the cash out and make it difficult for any attackers to simply walk in and cap the cash out without spending extra time destroying the pad. By combining the Jumppad with the zipline, you will be able to rotate anywhere quickly and take any position that you would like, which is beyond useful when your main job is supporting your team, especially the heavy users. But what should the heavies use? Let's go over that too. Starting off with the weapon. The hands down strongest weapon for heavy, maybe even in the game, will always be the SA-12, the automatic shotgun. It deals upwards of 104 damage per full pump with a potential damage per second of 390, which is more than enough to tear through an entire team with ease. Since it is a shotgun, it will lack viability towards the medium to long ranges, but it is so strong on its own that honestly, that trade-off is worth it. If you really want some mid-range damage on your team, you could use the Lewis gun, as it has a much easier controllable recoil than the M60, but I'd rather you use the other gadgets in Heavy's kit to deal with any target that's too far away instead, so let's talk about those. But starting off, we have to talk about Heavy's specialization. While the goo gun and the charge and slam are cool options, they pale in comparison in viability when it comes to the mesh shield. The mesh shield provides a Heavy with a movable shield that protects the Heavy and their teammates from anyone in front of them, while at the same time allowing the teammates to shoot straight through it. It has a health of 1250, which lasts quite a long time. The shield can be brought up and lowered at any time by toggling the ability button unless it has been destroyed, and it slowly regenerates shield whether it's held up or not, providing your team with an infinite amount of space to play behind when you're pushing an enemy. If you as a Heavy manage to get low and an enemy pushes up to finish the job, the mesh shield lets you step backwards while jumping and looking at them, which lets you survive or at the very least stall the fight out for a lot longer. And as I hinted at previously when we were talking about the ziplines, it can be used in conjunction with the zipline. The mesh shield is a one-handed ability, which means that it can be used if you're riding a zipline, which means that as a Heavy, you could take that zipline first, hold that shield up, and keep your teammates safe even if you're zipping straight into a full team that's looking right at you. On its own, the mesh shield provides an insane amount of space for your team, but when combined with the rest of the gadgets in this loadout, you will start wondering why you would ever play anything else than Heavy in the first place. The first one out of these very strong gadgets will be the C4. This satchel charge can be thrown and activated after about 1.9 seconds, dealing 239 damage per C4, and since you can throw 2 at a time, it can deal upwards of 478 damage if used at the same time. You can use the C4 to destroy any cover that the enemy might be using. You can blow up holes, entire buildings, placed gadgets. It can also be used as a trap on top of a choke or the cash out itself, or obviously to blow up enemies. At the time of this video, you can also cheese kills with the so-called nuke. The nuke is a strategy where you place a C4 charge on top of a barrel, ideally a green barrel, as this also will give you some additional gas damage, or a red barrel in which the C4 needs to be placed on this side, and then throw it at an enemy and blow it up when it's close, which lets you snipe enemies for an instant over 478 damage in the blink of an eye, without any real counterplay. The nuke is so good that until it's been nerfed, the C4 is a must-use if you want to get good results as a Heavy. On its own, the nuke gives you crazy one-shot potential against one user or entire teams, but it's not the only gadget that you will want to use to make up for the lack of range if you're using the shotgun. I mean, especially after the nuke finally will be fixed. next. Or, you know, I hope. Anyways, the next gadget will be the RPG. Using the RPG gadget brings up an RPG-7, which fires a rocket-propelled grenade towards the target, dealing 180 damage on a direct hit and destroying anything within its blast radius in the process, including cover and other placed gadgets. It has a cooldown of 45 seconds, but it's the perfect tool to destroy cover or even entire positions from range, or to completely annihilate a light build player by one-shotting them with a well-placed shot. You can use it to poke at the enemy and look for openings as well, because that 180 damage will put a medium to low health and a heavy to half health, which will be more than enough for you to push in and close out that fight. Using the nuke and the RPG will be all you need to make up for the lack of long-range damage from picking up the SA-1216. It all balances out, and if you do need more damage over range, you should have a medium player with you who can deal that additional damage. Last but not least, there is one more gadget that you really should run as a heavy, and that's the dome shield. And you might say, but wait, you already have the mesh shield. Do you really need more shields? And the answer is yes. If you look at the very peak teams in the finals, they usually run 2 heavies, both with 2 shields each. So in total, they're running 4 shields for the entire team. The dome shield works much like the mesh shield, where it blocks shots from enemies, but at the same time allowing allies to shoot through it. However, to activate it, you place it on the ground, after which it cannot move. It has 600 health and stays up for 20 seconds unless it's destroyed. Since it is placed on the ground, this means that the heavy also can shoot through it, making it the perfect gadget to push onto an unsuspecting team. You can push straight into an enemy team, toss that bubble down, and rush in with your entire team playing inside of it, giving you an additional effective health of another 600. If the enemy team doesn't have shields or can get behind cover in time, they will simply just die. The dome shield can also cut off sightlines if you are rotating. It can be thrown straight onto the cash out to steal it in the midst of pressure from the enemy, and of course, it can be thrown on top of an ally statue to revive them even when the enemies are close. Combining the nuke and the RPG to deal damage over longer ranges, in addition to using the shields to close the gap between you and your enemies, makes this by far the best loadout for the heavy build you could ask for. If you thought this was useful, you'll definitely want to learn more about every ability in the game, so you should check out the video on the screen. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you all next time. Peace out.